let me see, what am I? I am the great son and the next.
Do I know what this is for?
So yes, I am the great son. Yep.
That's what I'm thinking.
He has not responded.
Oh, I
Oh,
think it's
yeah.
for.
He has not responded.
Casey, come around this side, you get the bonus. That way.
No.
We don't like each other that much.
Now it is.
Okay.
No, he just didn't see. I don't know. I just like did that so I could talk to Gary. And then Gary. You're the clicker guy.
That would be rude.
That'd be rude, but it'd be fun. That's fine.
Well, I was doing well.
I'll be right back.
I don't want to be
Anyways. So,
No,
go ahead.
Did you get one of these?
No, I didn't.
One of these?
Yes, I did.
Well, now you do.
Yes.
It's complete now. Who knows this is?
Howdy.
I've had them for a long time. I'm not wearing them tonight. Yeah, they're cute. I love it when that happens.
You look different. Your hair?
How are you? Yeah. Color? Okay, color.
Watch along.
Let me sit down and you can sit in my lap. How's that sound? It's my headphones.
Changed a lot. Looks like a little man now. He's starting to have grown out a little bit of that baby fat.
Pegando mucho tiempo.
Oh no, he still is. I'm just saying.
How are you? Good. So cute.
Don't rush it. I
Oh
know.
yeah. There's some nice stuff on here. Hey, Sailor. Thank you. I got them off my bike
I
rack
see a lot of games this
for $30.
time. I see a lot of you in them.
You writing a story, a book?
That's okay. He's a male. He can.
Well, she is sitting with the.
He can get a little ugly.
Well, yeah.
Hey, we all know what we are, so it's all good.
You don't know? You're just having fun? That's what's important.
Just leave.
I don't have one, but now I do.
Crazy.
It's
This time, an illusion.
Well, you got your suit behind you.
Yeah, I'm sure they're done.
I don't know what happened. It's gonna go way over there. Not very sociable, is it?
Bring your woodman.
Come on, we clear out this seat for you. They're all yours. Come on. Have a seat.
Yeah, this is the slave one. This is the one that we're getting into all those where it's like.
Shalom, hermanos.
Kind of looks about right.
No, it's not.
It is
It's
interesting.
more of like it's more like yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. We got those.
Oh yeah, they got weird.
Okay, Abigail. Which was really funny too.
Shabbat shalom. Everybody get your ark and float in.
Yep.
Good. Coming off the ridge was like a, I I had people pass me at 100 miles an hour, and I'm thinking, really? Spraying the water all over the place?
No, we did bring
Because they can. I don't know. It's crazy.
Si yo me salgo de aquí.
So, in short, this is the law concerning slaves, violence, property, restitution, social and religious justice for all. Sounds like a commercial for one of those law office places. This is the 18th reading. It means judgment. Title comes from the first words of the first verse of the reading, which could be literally translated to say, and these are the judgments which you will place before them. Exodus 21:1. This is a legal code of law and commandments that form a nucleus for the Torah laws. The last chapter will tell stories of how the people of Israel consented to keep these laws and entered into a covenant relationship with Yahweh through a series of rituals conducted by Moshe. So, mishpat means a verdict, a sentence, a formal decree, a divine law. It is used against adversary, ceremony, charge, crime, custom. There's only like 100 of these that you can use for that, but you're right. So we start off in Exodus 21. When we're looking at it's interesting, the first thing they pretty much do when they get out of slavery, when they get out of leaving from being chased down by an enemy, that they're going to basically stop and form a law and a covenant. This actually is a very smart thing to do. How long does it take for a people to start going rogue without some kind of guidelines or some kind of something to go around?
30 seconds. 12 minutes.
Yeah.
The ultimate is the law of the strongest. The strongest and most ruthless ends up surviving
Yeah, that
without.
a Darwinism, if you will, but nonetheless, it is a true in this case. You see the old West law of the strongest and the fastest wins, or gets what they want. So we enter in and we see that this is, obviously in Yah's wisdom, He is going to start by sharing what needs to happen, what needs to go down when you're doing several things. The order of this is kind of interesting too, because for me, when you're looking at it, it's like he starts with 1 through 6 being slaves. And it's interesting because you're seeing this whole idea of slaves or bondservants as we're going into it, where it's interesting that they would start there. It's interesting when you're oppressed. I don't know if you've ever seen the schoolyard mentality is if you're bullied and you're able to bully another kid, do you have compassion on that person because you were bullied? Or do you become a bully yourself?
It depends.
Depends, right? We see a lot of times that bully mentality will actually carry on. We also see some of those who can learn from what they've been through and start making sure that they don't actually act upon, have compassion where compassion is due. So we start in 21, 1 through 6. I'm not going to really read a lot of this. We're just going to kind of hit and like I said, bring your comments in it. But your bondservant is going to serve for 6 years, and the 7th, they're going to let them go. So if you've got something going on, the idea here is that they're not going to be just lifelong servants, especially within the family. Unless they choose it. If they're married, she goes as well. If the master gave him the wife and the children, they stay. And that usually is where that point where he goes, well, I won't leave without my wife and children. I'll stay and be part of the
What if he
group.
did?
He has every right to leave.
Then he gets to go, well, I got my loophole, let's go. You know, I don't know.
I'm free.
Yeah, see you, bye.
See ya. But he has a choice to stay. Love his master, his wife, his kids. He bores an awl through the ear, and he becomes a servant forever. Remember that song, Pierce My Ear? Oh Lord, my, how's it go? God?
We could sing it for you.
And you do a better job than me. That's why I would actually do better if I singing it, because it actually helps with the remembrance. But I'm not going to do that. So it is interesting, that concept, when you think about that, you've got to put your head up against a wood object, and they're going to, when they bore that in, you're actually attached to the wood. You're not going anywhere. Like until he pulls that point out, or that spike out, you're kind of attached to the tree, the wood. So it's kind of interesting.
But it's a door post.
A doorpost.
So, which always represents what?
Well, and
Messiah.
And so that's exactly where I was going with that. But yes, it's the Messiah, and you see him being attached to the tree, the wood, and so you got that. It's interesting that it is the head, because that is where the commandments and where the idea and where your strength, this stuff comes from. 7 through 11, selling a daughter may suggest that the law did not allude to a father outright selling his daughter, but to give her in marriage at the appropriate time. This also kind of concerns the idea that if you're so poor that you cannot take care of, that it may be even giving them a better life in doing this, that it's not the same thing as what we would see in Egyptian slavery or the slavery. It'd be more like saying, I'm going to give you my daughter to be your handmaid, or be whatever, to work doing things of that nature for a time. And it actually can be where you're actually doing better for your daughter than actually making it worse for her, if that makes sense. Shh, be real quiet. So be nervous and awkward for them to walk in.
That's not the 2 seats I was pointing at.
I know. Fine, y'all go way down there. It's, you know.
No, we're a little bit more even here.
Gosh, I'll start all over again. Just kidding. Exodus 21 for you latecomers of. Y'all did great. Y'all did awesome. We love you guys. Just playing.
Thank you. Because my remote control doesn't work for me.
If it does not please the master, it can be redeemed. Seems to be a kind of a prorated type of thing, or could be a prorated kind of thing. We have no rights to sell to foreigners. So in other words, if you sell to a foreigner, do all these rules apply to that foreigner? Well, no, because you're selling outside of the stronghold. So, we also get into, if you marry the bondservant or the slave, as they're referred to, if it's the owner's son, she becomes as a daughter. She does not become like, her status goes from whatever to actually being a daughter-in-law. And has the rights, the same rights in marriage as anybody else that was being married. So you have somebody that's working for you, your son falls in love with her, and he wants to join in marriage, then it's completely, but that woman is going to have every right as a family member, just like as if she was not the bondservant before. Same rights to food, clothing, marital rights, and all of that would be in the same. So when we hear all this stuff about, we look at slaves and things of that nature, and we start seeing people will really often criticize the nature. Why would God allow this or that? Do we see a little bit of a difference in what he's doing as opposed to what the world would see slavery in that sense? He's making guidelines that are fair and that are, to me, he's trying to make sure that the rights are given. In 12 and 15, it talks about striking someone. If they died, you have to put them to death or go to a place to flee. If you strike a father or mother, you get the death penalty. In 17, it says if you're cursing your father and mother, you put to death. Yes, sir.
You skipped the kidnapping verse,
Yeah.
which is
Well, please bring it in.
always a fascinating one to me, that was there's the same penalty for kidnapping as there is for killing somebody with intent.
Yeah.
You basically, I heard the case made one time that because of that trauma, you essentially have taken the life of that person. They'll never be the same as they were before they were kidnapped. So I think that's interesting.
Well, I mean, if
I'm
you look
for
at,
it. I don't think we can get it to happen here.
no, I don't think so either. But when you look at Hamas and what they're doing and how they, will those people be the same ever again? Yeah, they're going to definitely have the trauma. Yes.
It is one of the four that, like, there's no statute of limitations, like murder 20 years later, kidnapping 50 years later, kidnapping, armed robbery, what's the fourth one? There's a fourth one that there's no statute of limitations, so at least they acknowledge it a little bit.
So there's something there, okay. I didn't.
Interesting. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Right, did I say right? Murder, rape, kidnapping, armed robbery.
Okay.
So with what you just said,
Kind of are set apart.
Yeah.
they are in a sense, but they're also things that are traumatic to, it's not just a rape is something that's very traumatic, very, going through, the kidnapping of someone, very traumatic, because you're being pulled away from, and you don't know your future, you don't know what's gonna happen next. Very interesting.
Isn't it interesting that it still happens today? With the kids that disappear.
Yeah.
And where they,
It
you
is.
read this and go, well, that doesn't happen now, but it does.
It does, you're right. Good morning, good morning.
It should rain more often.
Look what floated in.
I've got a question about that verse too.
Okay.
How does it connect with like Joseph and his brothers? They didn't sell him necessarily, but I don't know if you could call it they did kidnapping him. How do you view that?
Well, if the Torah existed at that time, they would have certainly broken it.
Yeah.
I
That's what
think
it
so
seems
too.
like. But obviously they weren't put to death, so.
Well, okay, look at verse, the one I wasn't gonna bring up. Okay.
Really?
Read verse 13.
Believe that?
What does 13 say?
If he does not lie in wait.
But Elohim delivered him into his hand. So there seems to be times when Elohim arranges things through the hand of another person, and he kind of gives that person
It's an opportunity.
But
it wasn't free.
Right. But it seems to me like there, Elohim is actually using the hand of this person, even unknowingly, to do something.
I appreciate that, and if you think about the circumstances there, I don't know that they had quite decided they were gonna do something with
Right.
it. It was kind of a spur of the moment.
And once he was gone, there was no.
Right.
Yeah, there's no going back. But yet, later on, you realize it was exactly for his purpose that he did it. So I think this fits into that verse quite well.
It is also interesting because you kind of need some leeway in a sense if you've got a father and a mother and someone has to leave with the child, and is that kidnapping, is that whatever? There's a whole lot of different things that we can talk about that creates.
But that's why this also seems to set up courts, because it says not just to do it yourself, but in the midst of the
Midst
others,
of- right.
in like a court setting.
So it can be decided what the intent was, or what the, and so hearkening back even to the, some of the stuff about slavery, where, you know, verse 10, if he takes another wife, you know, shall not diminish these things that she's due, and if he does, well, so somebody's gotta establish that, did he or didn't he?
Right,
You know, begin to treat her differently.
right. Yeah. Anything else? Like I said, I'm just gonna hit these, but I'm more than happy to go and jump in anywhere and talk about anything. I'm not trying to monopolize or ignore or monopolize on anything. Is that right? There you go. I almost twisted my tongue on that one. 22 and 23 talks about pregnant woman. Unborn child is treated the same as a human that has been born. And if you want to start talking about, is there any verses about killing a child? When does a child become a human? I believe that this pretty well shows you that when you're in the womb, you are, I mean, we all know that, but as the world sees it. If the child dies, when, say that something happens and the womb gets hit or whatever, child dies, it is murder. And murder is sentence for death. If damage is done, the restitution must be paid. And I find that very interesting as well. So 24, getting into 25, we have the eye for the eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. What is it that we're saying here? What is it really talking about? Proper compensation. If something happens and you need proper compensation of what's going on, too much can be just as bad as not enough. So there must be a way and balance system on how punishments are going to be proceeded. A just decision for damage done to the victim, the one who did the harm. I like Ephesians 5:13, when I was looking at it, it says, but when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. So things need to be brought forward, brought into the light, so that a clear judgment can be made. So we do see that the idea of restitution, we do see the idea that maybe instead of one thing happening, you could give a nominal amount for something or something that's going on. It's interesting to me, kafir means ransom, and it also means atonement. So when Yeshua paid the kafir, he paid for the kafir. And I know I'm mispronouncing that, so it sounded too
There
French.
seems to be an equality that Elohim, if you take this as not just a physical law, but a spiritual law.
Yeah.
He demands an equality. That's why he took the firstborn of, like he ransomed Israel with the firstborn of Egypt. There's an equality. If you do something, that's the judgment you're basically gonna get. If you desire to love, you will get love. If you desire to hate, you will get hate,
It's the measure for measure.
Exactly.
Concept, right? And I
Yeah.
think we can expand it, and something I appreciated about, what I've learned about measure for measure is, sometimes we say or we observe circumstances in our lives that are not fair, right? That where justice is not done. And I personally believe is that all of that is kept weighed in a balance with the Father, and someday He will restore.
The balance will be there.
And He will make that all work, because that's who He is,
Yeah, the
right?
balance will be
So we can have confidence and we can be encouraged, even when things happen to us that aren't fair, that are unjust, I think we can have confidence the Father will, at some day, that kind of cosmic scales will balance. And if you think about it, even beyond that, Yeshua's sacrifice, you know, so sometimes the rabbis will ask the question, for whose sins do the righteous suffer? Right? If every man is punished for his own sin, for whose sins do the righteous suffer? Right? Even that, I think, it's a cosmic balance.
There's a balance because as you're going through this life, as you're going through the wilderness, and you go through certain trials, there seems to be an equaling out that comes when you come out the other side of that trial.
But Yeshua being obviously completely righteous, the way he suffered
His way,
in the cosmic
Yeah.
balance, that pays
It pays,
for
it's
all
a
of us.
ransom, it
pays
is a
for all
ransom.
of us. That's how that works.
and it makes me even think of the judge not that you be not judged by the same measure that you judge. You
Yeah,
will be
exactly,
judged.
same thing.
Same
concept,
thing,
same
right?
concept.
So I mean, like, we need to be careful that we're not doing the judgment because
It's
we
gonna
may be
come
wrong
on
in
us.
our, yeah.
Right, what, our standard becomes
be
our standard.
Right.
And so, people who judge, it seems like they'll be judged. People who, okay, I'm not gonna, they'll be, okay, I'm not gonna, you know.
Right, I'm gonna let well, and it almost feels like, well, you've judged them and they've already gotten their punishment with whatever. I was gonna do a whole lot more, but this is what they get because you've done your due. I mean, I almost feel like it is even to that point of
Well, there
whatever,
seem to be
but-
prophecies that allude to that.
Yeah, I agree. So anybody else throw down on,
I was trying to find
There's something.
what Yeshua said about that. I think I'll see if I can find it here.
well, we're not going anywhere far from that anyways, for any time
But there is
soon.
the thing
So.
about the measure that
Yeah.
you give, the measure you
Yeah.
receive, yeah.
We start 22 of the chapter with the idea of restitution. And we see that the idea of 5 oxen for one. And then you see 4 sheep for a sheep. And what's interesting about this is because you can say, well, but the word for sheep really is a word for a flock animal. And so you see really that sheep or goat, whatever, that really, he's kind of showing the measurement that you're going to use if something happens. We see that King David knows this law for when he is confronted by the prophet Nathan for what amounted to stealing another's person, Uriah's wife Bathsheba, and their life, Uriah. David's anger burned greatly against the man in the hypothetical case presented by Nathan. He said to Nathan, as the man lives, surely the man who's done this deserves to die. He must make restitution for the lamb 4-fold. So you see that idea of the 4-fold, which is absolutely Torah. But then he goes on. He says, because he has done such a thing and has had no compassion, because of his lack of compassion, that man deserves to die. So he even goes further than even the Torah and goes on to say, because of his lack of compassion and love, he judges even harder than the law would have judged in this situation. Luke 9:18, ongoing, it says, after being saved, Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, behold, Lord, half of my possessions I will give to the poor, for I have defrauded anyone of anything. I will give back 4 times as much. So even in this, you see him saying, I want to give back 4 times, make restitution. And again, if you wondered where did he get 4 times from, now you can kind of see that he's getting it from a Torah concept of replacing it 4 times what was taken. That this is still running through that thread of Zacchaeus' response was unprovoked, clearly reflecting the transformation effect of salvation from one's heart, that he wanted to do what was right. And he wanted to do what was right by Torah and by Yahweh and to present himself clean. Anybody got any response to those pieces of information? Paul, while not speaking of restitution, does speak of reformation, writing, he who steals must steal no longer, but rather he must labor, performing from his own heart what is good, so that he will have something to share with the one who is in need. That's in Ephesians 4:28. So the restitution is a Hebrew word, shalom, not shalom, but shalom, which speaks of compassion, fulfillment. It's very nature of wholeness, a state of wholeness, unity, restored relationships. Restitution is the act of restoring to the rightful owner something that has been taken away, lost, or surrendered. The act of making good or compensating for loss, damage, or injury. Return of arrest or restoration is from a previous state and trying to get it back to what has been lost. But also, it seems to also infer that you're trying to restore even the mental grief or the things that you've gone through that time period of having your item lost or gone. So you see that a lot of times in the judicial service even today, where someone will say, I want this much money for restitution or for whatever has gone on. Yeah, I want my money and plus some. And usually the law will allow for that. Some people get a little crazy with that nowadays and goes, I want $10 million, and it's like, well, they just stole 100, but I don't know. But we're in a time period that everybody seems to go over the top about everything. So, at any rate, I think that's a mild comment for what is going on in this world today.
I found a, like.
Bring her, sir.
Well, it's the Beatitudes.
Ah,
If you look at Matthew 5:3 through 12, it really is measure for measure all the way through this. What I was thinking about was, blessed are the merciful.
Yes, for they shall receive mercy.
But that's that measure
yes.
for measure.
Yeah, yeah, and it works both sides.
Yeah.
amen. All right, we have laws about social justice. Easy for me to say. 16, if you have a seduction of a virgin, the bride price in marriage takes place. 18, you shall not permit a sorceress to live. This was interesting. I never really understood the difference in these two terms, which is a good thing, I am saying. Divination is attempting to discover the future, where sorcery is the attempt to change the future. I didn't really know that there was a definition between those two, but that's the difference between them. And for all you, everybody else who didn't know the difference between the two, praise y'all. So,
You say again?
okay, divination is the attempt to discover the future, where sorcery is the attempt to change the future.
There's an interesting word for sorcery is kasat, and it is a cognate to kasef, which is money.
Interesting, yeah.
There's kind of an interesting connection between those two. Think how money is used
Yes.
sometimes for control, to manipulate outcomes. Sorcery, is it the same thing? Could it be the same thing?
Well, it's one of the tools.
Yeah. Love those connections in the language.
No, the power of money, yeah, absolutely. In 19, whoever lies with an animal shall be put to death. Blech. 20, whoever sacrifices to any other god than the Lord alone shall be devoted to destruction, aka death. Well, that doesn't mean death. 21, you shall not wrong a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. Kind of implying you don't know their situation, you don't know where they've been, and so therefore you need to be mindful that I was with you through the whole time that you were sojourning and going in a land that was not your own. 22, you shall not mistreat any widow or fatherless child.
This is weird. You
Yeah.
read the next few verses, and once again, you get the equation, you get the equality. Basically, if you oppress them, I will make your family widows and orphans.
Right. So, go ahead.
Hebrews with, I mean, they cried out, right? And the Lord.
And were they orphans and widows? It's very interesting, and what I mean by that is
In a
that
sense.
their father,
Right,
they were away from their father.
right.
I mean, they weren't, but they, you know, from that standpoint. Right. $25, if you lend money to any of my people with you who is poor, you shall not be like a money lender to him. You shall not exact interest from him. If ever you take your neighbor's cloak in pledge, you shall return it to him before the sun goes down, for that is his only covering, and it is his cloak for his body. In what else shall he sleep? If he cries to me, I will hear, for I am compassionate. So, where the concept I'm seeing even with this is, if you come up to me and say, man, can I borrow some money? And I give you some. I try to go, now this is just, I feel like this is a biblical principle in another sense. I'm not expecting you to pay me back. In other words, I'm not gonna dog you for the money. Now, the right thing to do is to pay me back. If I have that attitude, then what happens is I don't get bitter towards you. Because I'm thinking, well, you know, it's a gift from me to you. I may not say it that way, but I'm thinking, if I see it back, then praise Yah. If I don't, then praise Yah. But again, this is just me talking, and you know, I feel like that there is some principle as far as with the brother to brother, sister to sister concepts that that attitude helps to prevent your attitude from becoming bitter and angry and upset with someone.
Yeah, basically, you're giving it to Elohim, and whatever he does with it is.
It's his.
Right, exactly.
So, and that also means that if we had a situation where a guy had a back operation and needed a little money, we gave him the church gave him a lot of money, and then the next year he went to Hawaii. And you're thinking,
Well, that's on him then.
Right, that's the thing about.
and we had to do that. We had to go like this. We had to just let it go, let it go.
Yeah, and that's on him.
So that, to me, is again where I find a ton of comfort in the cosmic scale concept, is I don't have to fix that.
No, I don't have to go up to him and go,
God will fix that.
And it says specifically in the Psalms,
Right.
do not sin yourself by holding that against that person.
and let's go another route. Maybe Yah wanted him to go. I'm not saying that, you know, but maybe he was,
But
that
then
was
that's in his hands.
Right,
right.
exactly.
Maybe that was something that he needed to do, or had, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't
And
know.
we don't know, and that's the whole point.
So, that being the case, we should not take offense to that. Now, did I have a twinge of did my eye kind of do this a little bit? Yeah, sure, I'm a human, you know.
Like, okay, this doesn't seem fair.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'm letting it
Cover
go.
in Hawaii, very good,
Yes, so let's admit that we're human, okay? Let's admit that we're human.
Which is why this stuff exists.
Exactly,
Why the Torah
thank you,
exists,
thank you.
because we're human. Weren't for that. Back to your point at the very beginning, how long does it take for?
And to Brandon's point, 30 seconds.
Stay by that answer.
Not long.
Not long. All right, 28 gets me a little bit. I think I've probably done this.
28 is neat.
Yes.
You shall not revile God, nor curse a ruler of your people.
No, and Elohim.
And Elohim.
And no, and. So
Another.
any-
And Elohim.
Right.
Right,
any God.
like any,
Okay, well, that
Elo-
is-
any Elohim.
Right.
That is interesting, isn't
That
it?
does make it.
Alright, talk about that a little bit more. I wanna hear you talk about that.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Michael and the archangel with Satan, he doesn't revile Satan. Instead, he said,
He
Jehovah
did say
reviled
that.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all I have to do is put those two verses together.
No problem. Well, and to that point then, it's Jude that talks about people who speak.
Who revile.
Who
Who
revile
revile.
the Elohim.
Exactly.
Without, kind of,
Exactly.
without,
So it says, do not worship the other Elohim,
Yeah.
but do not revile them
Revile them
either.
Could it, go ahead.
Don't you think also it could be like if you can revile another Elohim, then you can revile Elohim as
Well,
well, kinda, like,
I don't know if I would equate that, but still, I think this is given a distinct,
right.
because how many people, I hate to say this, how many people do revile?
should we even really try to rebuke us at times directly, or do we only do it in the name of, like, or say Yeshua?
Right.
The pattern in scripture seems to be,
That you don't
But it's-
address them
Dress,
directly.
direct.
yes.
My thought on that, and I'll let you
Yeah.
jump
No, go
in.
ahead.
My thought on this is that if Yah is using that,
They have
El,
authority, right?
then he has the authority through the Elohim.
And he
Right.
To do
always
what
has
he's doing.
authority.
And that was my,
Okay.
that was where I was going to.
He always has
Do you have
authority.
anything to add to that?
And it's
No,
all
that
about
was
authority.
like, I was, if the Lord puts them in that authority, and he obviously gave them that authority to do that, then yes, like, you shouldn't.
What's interesting about all of that though is that, wow, how hard is that? I mean,
Well, yeah,
I don't know.
28.
22,
28, sorry.
Yeah, I feel like it's really thinking about the whole spiritual warfare thing,
Right.
and I just think sometimes it's like,
well, do we really know what
I
we're
don't
doing?
know what, yeah, I don't know if we
Do we
do.
really know what, no, we don't.
So in this, that's the bigger, the one underneath that would be our ruler of the land. And we have,
Right.
now I've gone from my, it is harder. That's the one I think I'm really referring to. Now I'm almost feeling sorry for our president because he's sick. And he needs to be taken because of where he's at in dementia and all. He has dementia, there's no question about it. I almost feel more sorry for him than I do, I more have pity, but step down. Okay, sorry. But are we to curse our rulers, or are we to pray for them and try to get them to bless them?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my.
It doesn't say right here to pray for them, but.
No, it doesn't.
It's not the person.
But it says in other places to pray for the rulers of your land, wherever you've been placed.
All one book.
That's what it is. And that can be kind of a hard thing too. You got something, bro?
Question, just about that particular verse, and I just bring this maybe to the forefront as for consideration. So, thou shalt not revile the gods. How do we maybe equate this to the situation with Elijah and the prophets of Baal? Because there was a lot of sort of, your God is not the God.
Yes, but Elijah was also commanded to do that.
Oh, well, I understand that. I'm just saying that, like,
So I would simply
so
say,
is that the exception?
I would say that if somebody's commanded to do something, that's what they're commanded to do.
Not,
Will he, well, okay, never mind.
not to put too fine a point on it, but Elijah wasn't addressing their gods, he was
Addressing
the
their
priests.
prophets.
The
Or the prophets, okay,
The
all right, that's fair, that's fair.
And I don't think it's wrong to say that is not a God. That is not, or it may be a God, but this is the God.
Not mine.
It's not my God.
It's not the creator.
And I think it's fair to say that my Elohim is gonna rule over yours.
Oh, yeah, that's.
Without any problem at all,
yeah, that's-
you know, and I don't think that's blaspheming or
No.
cursing the other.
Okay, so then, does that go into the second part of the verse then, potentially? Curse a ruler of thy people? Or is that speaking just strictly to the Israeli thing?
I think this applies to all all rulers. Because remember, they're gonna be dispersed among all the peoples of the earth, all the nations of the earth.
So again, I would go back to the prophets of Baal then and say, okay, so what, I know there's gotta be a discrepancy, so the question is, what is it exactly?
Well, like Marcus was saying, he wasn't ever cursing Baal. He was kind of telling the prophets, where is your Elohim? How come he doesn't come down and do this?
Okay.
I mean, you see Gideon even cutting down the altars, you
Right,
see,
right.
destruction.
Yeah,
of
and they're
all,
commanded to
you know,
do that.
Right, and even today, we're commanded to get rid of.
Right.
So that goes into the worship of, but that's not, there is a line there,
I just
right?
wonder if that revile word is maybe worth a little bit more study.
Well,
for consideration.
I didn't know if you were gonna talk about the revile thing
I did
or
not. But you probably got something.
But that word is to make light of, essentially, it's like, oh, they're nothing.
To make slight,
And-
to be trifling, to be a
Let's
little
put it
town.
It's almost,
They just put a new light on, sorry, I didn't mean to pun that.
Well, it's okay.
and curse, that word curse then is a rar, and it literally means to put in a box or to limit.
Limit is,
And the way I think about that is that God says in other places that he sets up rulers. So when we limit them, we're really limiting him and what he can do with
So
them.
you can take that in a
If you
positive and
limit-
negative sense.
if you limit him, then that's in effect limiting yourself.
Yes,
Yeah.
any limit you put on anything is, you're limiting yourself.
So, interesting.
Yeah.
Anything further there?
No, I don't, there's just.
Good, good.
Interesting that the curse is to like bitterly curse also.
It is.
It has like more of an emphasis that like,
It is, it's the same,
yeah,
it's the same, yeah, that's right.
Like an emotional,
like it's like, I mean, obviously there's like, you know, emotion involved, but it's like, I mean, yeah.
That be the case of taking things in your own hands and not allowing God
Right.
to be the punisher.
Right.
Well,
judge
he did-
not, be not judged.
Well, what was Laban instructed to do or not to do to Yaakov as he was going back?
Right.
You know, do not speak good or evil. You can
Right.
basically, do not bless or curse, but just speak the truth.
Speak the truth and live. All right, good discussion. 29, you shall not delay to offer from the fullness of your harvest and from the overflow of your presses. The firstborn of your son you shall give to me. You shall do the same with your oxen, with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its mother, and the 8th day you shall give it to me. What's a today's equivalent of that? What would today's equivalent of that be?
No?
As far as giving the first fruits and the first of your harvest, the first of what? So what could be our
Will be monetary, right?
somewhat?
I mean,
Could be monetary wise. Used to be a practice when I was growing up that everybody would take their first. Now I know the whole tithing thing gets everybody crazy, but they would take their first 10%. My parents would lay that aside before they bought anything out of a paycheck, and that was going to go to whatever for charity, for church, for whatever in that order. And then they would take the rest of it and pay bills and do whatever they had to do and put aside for the storm that was coming, whatever.
Well, this seems to be in direct, once again, the equality with what happened with Egypt. He took their firstborn, therefore he's taken Israel's firstborn, of
Right.
both man and cattle and sheep and livestock, because he took the firstborn
Right,
of everything in Mitzrayim.
So what was the firstborn supposed to be?
Well, the inheritance.
priest.
Right, the priest and.
Inheritance to God,
Yeah.
yeah, to Yah. So, when we look at it from that standpoint as well, it's like, okay, so you're setting aside the portion that would be, what is usually when you're, okay, in a garden, those of you that put out a garden, the first fruits that come in, are you excited when you see the first fruits coming in?
Sure.
Are you ready to dig in to the first fruits that come in? Are you, I mean, is it usually the best looking stuff that comes in? Yes! And so, does God want your second best or he wants your first? Does he want the stuff you're excited about or stuff you're like, yeah, you know, I've been eating tomatoes for a month now, I'm a little tired of them, he can have the rest, I'll take that to the poor.
And he wants us, just the act of taking that first thing and setting it aside is just an acknowledgement like, this isn't really mine.
Who gave us everything? So all of this kind of overflow, if you will, or this fullness, and I believe, and when we do that, does next year's harvest reflect, or the rest of the harvest reflect our giving? It can. Now, that doesn't mean that a drought doesn't go through and you think, well, what happened? Your blessings isn't determined by what we think is blessings. And we'll have to do a study on blessings sometimes because it's, you know, clearly more to it. 31, you shall be consecrated to me, therefore you shall not eat any flesh that is torn by beasts in the field. You shall throw it to the dogs, or to the swine, or to the whatever. Anything that is not of the clean nature. Again, is he trying to say, don't even treat yourself to something that is second rate and garbage. You're part of me. You're my image bearer. Are you going to sit there and eat the stuff that roadkill?
Right.
That's not how I didn't make you the roadkill eaters. You are not the unclean. You're not the scavengers. You're not the whatever. You are my children. And so therefore, I mean, even in that ruling, you see that there is a idea of, I want you to even be set aside. You are part of my chillins. My chillins. All right, anybody else before we go jumping into 23? We're already, but this has been a great study. So, 23, jump into the laws of the Sabbath, festivals. 6 years you shall sow your land, gather in its yield, but the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, that the poor of your people may eat, and what you leave the beast of the field may eat, and you shall do likewise with your vineyard and with your orchard vineyard. 12, 6 days you shall do your work, but on the 7th day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may have rest, and the sons of your servant women and the alien may be refreshed. Yeah. That's all I heard. Any comments? 3 times a year, 14, you shall keep feast to me, unleavened bread for 7 days, feast of harvest, first fruits, the feast of ingathering. 20, he says, behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have prepared. 21, pay close attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgressions, for my name is in him.
Who's that talking about?
Very interesting verse, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So what gives them the right to pardon people?
It'll be what's in them, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, who is in them.
Mm-hmm.
The name that is in him.
Somebody else asked that question, Gary. Who is this man?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Forgive sins.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm alluding to.
What's scary is that they didn't recognize and who they were for sure. You know, it's like they should have been the ones that was recognizable.
Well, many did, but not. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, just for that comment, you know, you're.
Yeah. Yeah.
In 30, he says, little by little I will drive them out from before you until you have increased and possessed the land. And I will set your borders from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, from the wilderness of Euphrates. For I will give the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and you shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. You shall not dwell in their land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you. Again, we get the idea that in our land, we will say there's no gods around, but are there gods, and do they snare us today?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
everywhere.
And we gotta be very careful that we don't get sidetracked by the gods of this world. Verse 24, there's a covenant that's confirmed. This come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. Worship from afar. Moses alone shall come near to the Lord, but the other shall not come near, and the Lord shall come up with him. So Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the rules. And all the people answered in one voice, all the words that the Lord has spoken, we will do. So contract is being made, contract is written, contract is agreed upon. These are the things that we will do. They are going to build an altar in the morning at the foot of the mountain. There's going to be 12 pillars that represent the 12 tribes. Each one of them going to be represented. The young men of Israel offer burnt offerings, sacrifice peace offerings of oxen to the Lord. It goes on in 8, it says, he took the blood and threw it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made for you in accordance with all these words. And we do see and understand, the covenants were made for they were two-sided. But they're also like, whatever happened with this bull, whatever's happened, you understand that the blood that is being sprinkled, this is going to happen to you if you're not keeping the covenant that we're making today. This is very strong language. We kind of read through it very quickly, but this is a very strong covenant being given. These are covenant words. Behold the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words. All right, just for fun, since we're out of time. Yes, sir.
I have something that's a little bit of a departure that I
Oh,
wanted
please do.
to point out. Did you want to do something else?
No, in fact, I was just going to talk about this sapphire stone, but this may be more pertinent.
Shred, I don't know how many of you know about Joel Rosenberg. Does the name ring bells?
Yeah.
But he founded a news organization that puts out emails now daily, basically, that keeps you up on what's going on in the land of Israel from his perspective. And it's really interesting to read this week an article indicating that Israel has experienced like 2 weeks of a soaker rain. So not a rain that causes problems with runoff and mudslides and all this kind of stuff like what California is experiencing, but a soaker rain, like a rain that's got the time to really soak into the soil. And it made me think about Deuteronomy 11. And just read this, put this out there for your consideration. Given everything that's going on with them right now, this rain is interesting to me. In Deuteronomy 11:10, he says to them, for the land you're entering to take possession of it is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come, where you sowed your seed and irrigated it like a garden of vegetables. But the land that you are going over to possess is a land of hills and valleys, which drinks water by the rain from heaven, a land that the Lord your God cares for. The eyes of the Lord your God are always upon it, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. If you will indeed obey my commandments that I command you to love the Lord your God, to serve him with all your heart and your soul, he will give the rain for your land in its season, the early and the latter, that you may gather in your grain and your wine and your oil. So he's basically saying, if you obey me, I'm going to bless you, and one of the signs of the blessing will be rain. And they've had now a couple years of really, really good rainfall. So just for what it's worth, I think it's interesting. It's
Interesting, cause the blessing and amongst the cursing will.
There are several places that are gonna be closed now.
Yeah.
So, actually, I think that's a great place to stop. If you read the rest of it, you do look at just the imagery of Yahweh,